I stand alone in the Riverside Country Club banquet hall I rented for my MBA graduation celebration. White tablecloths stretch across 24 empty chairs, untouched shrimp cocktail growing warm under crystal chandeliers. My phone buzzes with a text from my sister Jessica. "We're in Paris. Nobody cares about your graduation dinner." My cousin Brandon adds, "Oh, and your $28,000 savings covered our tickets. Thanks." I stare at the messages, then at the empty room that cost me $3,000 to reserve. The silence echoes off marble walls as I whisper one word that will change everything: good. The country club's grandfather clock chimes 7:30, and I'm still the only person in this magnificent room. Crystal glasses catch the light from the chandeliers overhead, creating tiny rainbows on the pristine white tablecloths I personally selected 3 weeks ago. Each place setting represents someone I believed cared about my achievement, someone I thought would want to celebrate the completion of my MBA at Northwestern University. 3 months ago, I was the family's golden boy working part-time at Henderson Properties while maintaining a 4.0 grade average. My father, Robert, always introduced me as my son, the future of our business, while my younger sister Jessica and cousin Brandon seemed content living in my shadow. I didn't mind being the responsible one. In fact, I embraced it. Henderson Properties was founded by my grandfather in 1972, built from nothing into a commercial real estate empire worth millions. My father took over in 2005, and everyone assumed I'd be next in line. For 2 years, I'd been saving every penny from my part-time salary and weekend consulting gigs, building a nest egg to buy into the family partnership after graduation. Jessica studies art history at Pemberton College, a private institution that costs $60,000 annually. Our parents cover every expense without question. She lives in a luxury apartment near campus, drives a BMW. I watched my father purchase last Christmas and spends her summers traveling through Europe on what she calls cultural education trips. Brandon dropped out of community college after 1 semester and moved into the guest house behind our family's estate in Lake Forest. He claims he's an entrepreneur, always pitching new business ventures that require substantial upfront investments. Last year, it was a food truck specializing in fusion tacos. The year before, he wanted to start a cryptocurrency exchange. Both ventures disappeared, along with the money our family invested. 2 weeks ago, when I mentioned wanting to celebrate my graduation properly, my father's eyes lit up. "Absolutely, son. This is a major milestone. Invite everyone important. Make it memorable." He suggested I invite his business partners, potential clients, and the entire extended family. Think of it as your official introduction to the professional world. I spent hours crafting the perfect guest list, designing elegant invitations, and selecting a menu that would impress my father's colleagues. The Riverside Country Club represented everything I was working toward: tradition, success, and belonging to something bigger than myself. I wanted this dinner to mark my transition from student to partner, from son to equal. My girlfriend Sarah seemed excited about the event. We'd been dating for 8 months, and I was planning to introduce her to the extended family for the first time. She even bought a new dress specifically for the occasion, something elegant in navy blue that complemented her blonde hair perfectly. But as I sit here surrounded by empty chairs and untouched food, my hands shake as I reach for my wallet. Something feels wrong beyond just the abandonment. My leather wallet, usually thick with cards and cash, feels unnaturally thin. I pull out my phone and open my banking app with growing dread. My savings account, which showed $28,600 last week, now displays a balance of $412. But that's not the worst part. As I scroll through recent transactions, my stomach drops. Small withdrawals appear throughout the past 6 months, $200 here, $500 there, always just under the amounts that would trigger fraud alerts. The Paris trip wasn't just a spontaneous betrayal. This was systematic theft that had been happening right under my nose for months. I set my phone down with trembling hands, staring at the elaborate spread of food that will go to waste, just like my trust in the people I loved most. I dial the fraud hotline for First National Bank, my hands still shaking as I sit alone among the elegant table settings. The automated system routes me through endless menus before finally connecting me to Linda, a customer service representative who sounds genuinely concerned when I explain my situation. "Mr. Henderson, I'm looking at your account history now," Linda says, after I provide my identification information. "I can see why you're confused. Let me trace these transactions for you." The next few minutes destroy every assumption I had about my family's honesty. Linda explains that my sister Jessica was added as an authorized user on my savings account when I turned 18, supposedly for emergency purposes. According to the bank's records, my father, Robert, set up this arrangement to help Mac learn financial responsibility by having family oversight. The withdrawals began small. Linda continues. $50 in January, then gradually increased. Most stayed under $500, which explains why you didn't receive notifications. Your sister has been making these withdrawals consistently for 18 months. 18 months. While I worked double shifts at the family business, while I studied late into the night, while I saved every dollar for my future partnership, Jessica was quietly draining my accounts to fund her lifestyle. The food truck Brandon claimed he was financing with his own savings, the cryptocurrency venture that required a $10,000 investment, all funded with my money. There's another concern, Linda adds hesitantly. I'm seeing credit card charges linked to your account from someone named Brandon Henderson. These appear to be international transactions from the past week totaling approximately $15,000. My cousin hasn't just stolen money for a European vacation. He's been using a credit card somehow connected to my financial accounts, running up charges I'll be responsible for. The Paris trip that Jessica and Brandon claimed cost $28,000 actually totals over $43,000 when I include Brandon's separate credit card spending. I thank Linda and hang up, then sit in my car in the country club parking lot, trying to process the magnitude of this betrayal. My family didn't just abandon my graduation dinner on a whim. They planned this theft carefully, using my own money to fund their escape while leaving me alone with the bills and the humiliation. I drive to Henderson Properties needing answers from my father. The building sits dark against the evening sky, but I have a key and know the security code. Inside my father's office, I flip on the lights and immediately notice financial documents scattered across his mahogany desk, unusual for someone who typically keeps everything filed precisely. The papers tell a story I never suspected. Henderson Properties is drowning in debt. The last 3 major deals fell through, leaving the company with massive obligations and no revenue to cover them. Construction loans are in default. Client payments are months overdue. The business I thought I'd be joining as a partner is actually a failing enterprise being kept afloat through increasingly desperate measures. But the worst discovery sits in a manila folder labeled Trust Fund Management. My grandfather established a substantial trust for my education and future partnership in the business. According to these documents, my father has been using that money to cover Henderson Properties' operating expenses for the past 2 years. The account that should contain over $200,000 now shows a balance of $37,000. I find printed emails between my father and Jessica discussing how to manage Mac's expectations about joining the partnership. One email from Jessica dated 3 weeks ago reads, "He's getting suspicious about the money. Maybe we should let him buy in for a small percentage, just enough to feel important, while we figure out how to fix the bigger problems." Another email from my father responds, "Absolutely not. If he discovers the trust fund situation, he'll have legal grounds to audit the entire business." We need him focused on school until we can stabilize things. The Paris trip will buy us time. They never intended to let me become a real partner. They needed my money to keep their failing business alive while keeping me ignorant of the true situation. My years of hard work, my careful savings, my dreams of building something meaningful with my family were never part of their plans. My phone buzzes with a text from my girlfriend, Sarah. Sorry, I couldn't make dinner tonight. Jessica called and said you canceled because of a family emergency in Europe. Hope everything's okay with Brandon and Jessica. Call me when you get back. The lies extend even to Sarah. My sister called her directly to ensure she wouldn't show up at the dinner, making my humiliation complete. Not only did they steal my money and abandon my celebration, they actively deceived my girlfriend to guarantee I'd be sitting alone in that banquet hall. I lock up the office and drive home through the quiet streets of Lake Forest, passing houses where families probably sit down for honest dinners together, where children don't steal from their siblings, and parents don't embezzle from trust funds. The family estate looks peaceful in the moonlight, its manicured lawns and Georgian architecture suggesting stability and tradition that apparently exist only on the surface. I sit in my Jeep Cherokee outside Henderson Properties for nearly an hour, staring at the building that represents 3 generations of my family's work. The weight of what I've discovered presses against my chest like a physical force. My father isn't just a bad businessman making poor decisions. He's a criminal who's been systematically stealing from client accounts and family trusts. My sister and cousin aren't just selfish and thoughtless. They're accomplices in a conspiracy that could destroy lives. My phone shows 11:47 p.m. as I finally dial the credit card company's 24-hour fraud line. The customer service representative, a patient woman named Carol, walks me through the process of reporting the cards used by Jessica and Brandon as stolen. Within minutes, those cards are deactivated, leaving them stranded in Paris with no access to my money. Next, I call the bank and remove Jessica as an authorized user on all my accounts. The process requires additional verification since she's been on the accounts for so long, but Linda from earlier has flagged my case as high priority. Every automatic payment I've been covering for my family gets canceled. Jessica's tuition payments, Brandon's car loan, the insurance on his vehicle, and the monthly allowance I've been providing for their expenses. But these immediate actions feel insufficient given the scope of their betrayal. I need legal advice and I know exactly who to call. William Hartwell handled my grandfather's estate planning and still serves as the family attorney for trust-related matters. Despite the late hour, I dial his emergency number. Mac. William's voice sounds concerned but alert. What's happened? I explain everything I've discovered from the stolen savings to the failing business to the depleted trust fund. William listens without interruption, occasionally asking for specific details about dates and amounts. When I finish, he's quiet for several long moments. Your grandfather suspected this might happen, William finally says. He was brilliant but not naive. He built protection into your trust that your father doesn't know about. According to William, my grandfather included clauses that allow me to trigger an immediate forensic audit of Henderson Properties if I suspect financial misconduct. The trust also gives me the right to freeze all family financial accounts pending the results of that audit. Most importantly, I actually own 35% of Henderson Properties through inheritance provisions my grandfather kept confidential. My father has been operating under the assumption that he controls the company completely. There's more, William continues. Your grandfather established a separate account with emergency funds specifically for situations like this. He wrote a letter explaining his concerns about Robert's character and his confidence in your integrity. If you want to take control of this situation, you have the legal authority and the financial resources to do it. By 2 a.m, I've signed papers authorizing the audit frozen family accounts and activated the protective measures my grandfather built into the trust. William assures me the process will move quickly since we have documentation of the stolen funds and evidence of business mismanagement. I drive home feeling a mixture of exhaustion and determination. The house sits dark and empty, with my parents presumably sleeping peacefully while their children commit crimes in Europe. For the first time in my life, I'm grateful for the silence. I need time to plan my next moves without their manipulation and lies. My phone rings at 6 a.m., waking me from restless sleep. Jessica's name appears on the screen and I answer to hear her screaming hysterically. "Mac, what did you do?" she shrieks. Our hotel payment was declined and they're holding our passports until we settle the bill. Brandon's credit card was rejected at breakfast, and now we're stuck in the lobby with security guards watching us. I listen to her panic without feeling the slightest sympathy. "You stole $43,000 from me, Jessica. Did you think there wouldn't be consequences? It wasn't stealing. It was family money and we needed a break after everything we've been through." "What exactly have you been through?" I ask. "Free college education, free housing, free car, free everything while I worked and saved for years." She hangs up, but within minutes, Brandon calls from what sounds like a busy police station. His usual confident swagger has been replaced by genuine fear. "Dude, they repossessed my car during a traffic stop," he says. "The loan company said the payments stopped and they had a court order. I'm at the police station trying to figure out how to get home. But my wallet's in the car and I don't have money for a cab." I explain the same thing to Brandon that I told Jessica actions have consequences and their actions were theft. But before I can hang up, my father's number appears on the screen. "Mac, we need to talk." Robert's voice sounds strangely calm, almost relieved. "I'm at the office. Can you come in?" When I arrive at Henderson Properties, I find my father sitting in his office with his head in his hands, surrounded by the financial documents I'd seen the night before. He looks up when I enter, and I'm startled to see tears in his eyes. "I'm glad you found out," he says quietly. "I've been drowning for 2 years, and I didn't know how to tell you." The conversation that follows destroys my remaining assumptions about my family. Robert admits that Henderson Properties owes $800,000 to clients whose money was supposed to be held in escrow for property purchases. He's been using newer clients' deposits to pay older clients, creating a classic Ponzi scheme that gets more desperate with each passing month. "The Paris trip was Jessica's idea," he explains. "She said if we could keep you distracted for another few weeks, she'd help us figure out a solution. Your mother knows everything, Mac. She's been helping me move money between accounts to buy time. My mother, Patricia, who taught me about honesty and integrity, who made me promise never to lie or cheat, has been forging client signatures and falsifying documents to cover up their crimes. The woman I trusted more than anyone in the world has been planning to frame me for their theft. We were going to blame you for the missing money," Robert continues. "Make it look like you had a gambling problem or drug addiction. Jessica had documentation ready to support the story. We thought if we could make you the scapegoat, the rest of us could start over somewhere else." I stare at my father, this man I've spent 24 years trying to impress, and realize I don't know him at all. The successful businessman was an illusion. The loving father was a performance. The family legacy was built on lies that started long before I was old enough to understand. But as we sit in his office discussing the full extent of their betrayal, my phone rings with Jessica's number. This time, she's not screaming about declined credit cards. She's whispering frantically, and I can hear genuine terror in her voice. "Mac, someone's following us," she says. "These men approached Brandon at a cafe and said they know about Henderson Properties. They want to meet about business opportunities, but something feels wrong. They know details about our family that strangers shouldn't know. I realize our family's crimes have attracted attention from dangerous people who may not be interested in legal remedies." Jessica and Brandon might be facing consequences far worse than frozen credit cards and repossessed cars. My father's office suddenly feels like a war room as I process Jessica's terrified phone call. The men following them in Paris aren't random criminals. They know specific details about Henderson Properties, which means our family's financial crimes have attracted the attention of organized criminals who view the missing escrow funds as a business debt. Who are the clients whose money you stole? I ask Robert, my voice steady, despite the gravity of the situation. My father's face goes pale as he shuffles through the client files on his desk. Most of them are local businesses and private investors, but there's one account that's been particularly problematic. He pulls out a thick folder labeled Meridian Holdings, LLC. Meridian Holdings invested $400,000 through Henderson Properties for a commercial real estate deal that never materialized. According to the file, Meridian is owned by Viktor Kozlov, a Russian immigrant who made his fortune in import-export businesses. The file contains newspaper clippings suggesting Kozlov's businesses operate in legal gray areas with suspected connections to money laundering operations. How long has their money been missing? I ask. 14 months, Robert admits. Kozlov's representatives have been increasingly aggressive about demanding updates on their investment. Last month, they threatened to involve their own investigators if we didn't provide immediate results. I call William Hartwell and explain the new complication. Within an hour, he's in the office with us along with a private investigator named Thomas Reed, who specializes in international financial crimes. Reed explains that criminal organizations often use legitimate investments to launder money, then become extremely violent when those investments disappear. If Kozlov's people are tracking your family in Paris, they view this as a $400,000 debt that needs to be collected one way or another. Despite everything Jessica and Brandon have done to me, I can't let them face physical danger because of my father's crimes. But I also refuse to simply hand over money to criminals without getting something substantial in return. I'll help them, I tell Robert and William. But the family needs to understand that everything changes after this. No more lies, no more theft, no more treating me like a fool who exists to solve problems I didn't create. I wired $25,000 to a trusted contact in Paris, a former college roommate named David, who works for an international consulting firm. David agrees to help Jessica and Brandon get safely out of France and back to the United States. But the money comes with conditions. They have to follow David's instructions. Exactly, they can't contact any family members until they're back on American soil, and they must return home immediately without any additional European travel. While coordinating their rescue, I'm also working with William to implement my takeover of Henderson Properties. The forensic audit reveals the full extent of my father's mismanagement: $800,000 in missing client funds, $300,000 in unpaid business loans, and $200,000 stolen from my trust fund. The business is technically insolvent, but my grandfather's hidden assets provide enough capital to cover the debts if managed properly. William presents my father with legal documents that transfer controlling ownership of Henderson Properties to me, along with full authority over all family financial accounts. Robert can remain as an employee with a reduced salary, but he'll have no decision-making power and will be subject to strict oversight for all business activities. You also need to understand that your wife and children will be held accountable for their roles in this conspiracy, William explains. Mac is being extraordinarily generous by not pressing criminal charges, but the generosity depends on complete cooperation with the recovery process. 3 days later, Jessica and Brandon returned from Paris, chastened and humbled by their experience. Jessica's usual defiant attitude has been replaced by genuine remorse, while Brandon seems to finally understand that actions have consequences. They're both required to attend financial counseling sessions and submit to monthly account reviews to prevent future theft, but the most significant change comes from an unexpected source. Thomas Reed's investigation into Meridian Holdings reveals that Viktor Kozlov isn't just a criminal trying to recover stolen money. He's actually an undercover federal agent working on a long-term investigation into international money laundering operations. The missing $400,000 represents evidence in a federal case, not a debt to organized crime. Your father's theft inadvertently compromised an ongoing FBI investigation, Reed explains. But your cooperation in recovering the funds and providing documentation could help the Bureau complete their case against the real criminals. Agent Kozlov meets with us the following week, explaining that his investment in Henderson Properties was designed to track how criminal money moves through legitimate real estate transactions. My father's theft actually created an opportunity for the FBI to trace additional criminal activities they wouldn't have discovered otherwise. We're prepared to overlook the misappropriation of our investigative funds in exchange for your family's full cooperation with our investigation, Agent Kozlov explains. Your business records and client files could help us identify other money laundering operations throughout the Chicago area. Working with the FBI gives Henderson Properties credibility and protection while we rebuild the business legally. Agent Kozlov even recommends us to legitimate investors who are impressed by our willingness to cooperate with federal authorities and implement strict financial oversight. 6 months after that humiliating graduation dinner, Henderson Properties is operating with complete transparency, serving legitimate clients and building a reputation for ethical business practices. My father works as a senior sales associate under my supervision, earning back trust through consistent, honest behavior. My mother handles administrative tasks while attending therapy to address the psychological factors that led her to participate in financial crimes. Jessica has transferred from expensive Pemberton College to Northwestern University, where she's studying business administration while working part-time at Henderson Properties to repay her debt to me. Brandon completed an electrician training program I arranged and is starting his own legitimate contracting business with proper licensing and insurance. The transformation hasn't been easy, but it's been honest. For the first time in years, our family dinners include actual conversations instead of manipulation and lies. We're building relationships based on mutual respect rather than financial dependence. The morning after Jessica and Brandon's safe return from Paris, I'm reviewing financial statements in my new office when my phone rings with an international number. My stomach tightens, expecting more complications from their European misadventure. Mac Henderson. The voice has a slight Eastern European accent, professional, but somehow menacing. This is Mac. Who am I speaking with? My name is Viktor Kozlov. I believe we have mutual interests regarding your family's business affairs. I signal for Thomas Reed, who's been helping coordinate security measures and activate the call recording feature on my phone. Reed nods approvingly as I continue the conversation. Mr. Kozlov, I understand you're a client of Henderson Properties. I'd be happy to discuss your account. Your family has been very creative with my investment, Mr. Henderson. $400,000 was entrusted to your father for a specific real estate venture. That money has been missing for 14 months. Kozlov's voice remains calm, but there's an underlying threat that makes my hands shake slightly. I'm talking to someone who tracks down stolen money for a living, and my family has made themselves targets through their criminal behavior. I'm aware of the situation with your account. I respond carefully. I've recently assumed control of the business, and am working to resolve all outstanding client obligations. Would you be available to meet and discuss a resolution? Very responsible of you, young man. However, I should mention that your sister and cousin were quite chatty during their recent European vacation. They shared interesting details about your family's financial empire with some associates of mine in Paris. My blood runs cold. Jessica and Brandon didn't just steal money for vacation. They compromised our family's security by bragging to strangers about our business, potentially exposing us to criminals who now view Henderson Properties as a target for further exploitation. What exactly are you proposing, Mr. Kozlov? A meeting. Tomorrow, 2 o'clock at your office. Come alone and bring documentation showing how you intend to restore my investment. We can discuss whether your family's debts require additional forms of repayment. After hanging up, Thomas Reed immediately begins making calls to his contacts in federal law enforcement. Within 2 hours, we're sitting in a secure FBI conference room with Agent Sarah Morrison, who heads the Bureau's Financial Crimes Division. Viktor Kozlov is indeed an international criminal with suspected ties to Russian money laundering operations, Agent Morrison explains. But he's also been cooperating with our investigation into organized crime activities in the Chicago area. The $400,000 your father stole represents evidence in an ongoing federal case. The complexity of our situation becomes clear. Kozlov is simultaneously a criminal, a federal informant, and a legitimate victim of my father's theft. The FBI needs our cooperation to complete their investigation, but they can't openly protect us without compromising Kozlov's undercover status. Your family inadvertently became involved in a federal investigation, Agent Morrison continues. The good news is that your willingness to cooperate and make restitution demonstrates that you're not career criminals. The bad news is that Kozlov's criminal associates view your father's theft as a sign of disrespect that requires consequences. Agent Morrison proposes a solution that protects our family while advancing the FBI investigation. I'll meet with Kozlov as scheduled, but federal agents will be monitoring the conversation from nearby locations. The goal is to determine whether Kozlov intends to collect the debt legitimately or if he's planning to use our family's vulnerability for additional criminal activities. If Kozlov makes any threats or demands beyond simple financial restitution, we'll have grounds to arrest him and his associates, Agent Morrison explains. But you need to understand the risks. These are dangerous people who don't hesitate to use violence when they feel disrespected. I spend the evening preparing for the meeting while implementing additional security measures for my family. Jessica and Brandon are staying at a hotel under assumed names until the situation resolves. My parents have temporary protection from private security guards Thomas Reed arranged through his network of former law enforcement personnel. The next afternoon, Viktor Kozlov arrives at Henderson Properties precisely at 2 o'clock, accompanied by 2 large men who position themselves near the exits while we talk in my office. Kozlov himself is smaller than I expected, perhaps 55 years old with graying hair and expensive clothing that suggests legitimate business success. You've made impressive changes to your father's business, Kozlov observes, reviewing the financial statements I've prepared. The forensic audit shows real commitment to transparency. Most criminals simply disappear when their schemes collapse. I'm not a criminal, Mr. Kozlov. I'm trying to fix problems I didn't create while building an honest business. Kozlov studies me carefully, then opens a briefcase containing documents that surprise me completely. Instead of demands for immediate payment, he presents incorporation papers for a new company called Meridian Development LLC. I propose a partnership, Mr. Henderson. Your family's business has potential, but it lacks the international connections necessary for significant growth. My organization can provide capital and clients for legitimate real estate ventures with appropriate oversight to prevent future mismanagement. The offer is tempting but dangerous. Kozlov is essentially proposing to turn Henderson Properties into a front for money laundering operations disguised as legitimate business expansion. Accepting would solve our immediate financial problems while making us permanent criminals. I appreciate the offer, I respond, but Henderson Properties is committed to operating within legal boundaries. I'd prefer to repay your original investment and maintain our independence. Kozlov's expression doesn't change, but his associates shift slightly, hands moving toward concealed weapons. The temperature in the room seems to drop as he considers my rejection of his proposal. Independence is expensive, Mr. Henderson. Your family's debt represents more than money. It represents disrespect, carelessness, and damage to my reputation among business associates who expect reliable performance. Before I can respond, Kozlov's phone rings. He answers in rapid Russian, his voice becoming increasingly agitated. After hanging up, he turns back to me with what might be genuine concern. There's been a development that affects our negotiation. My associates in Europe report that your sister and cousin were not the only Americans making unusual financial claims in Paris last week. Someone has been impersonating members of your family, attempting to access bank accounts and make large withdrawals using forged identification. The revelation adds another layer of complexity to our situation. Our family isn't just dealing with consequences from our own crimes. Someone else is using our identities for additional financial fraud, potentially connecting us to criminal activities we didn't commit. Who would have access to our personal information, I ask. Kozlov's answer chills me to the bone. Someone with inside knowledge of your family's financial situation and enough criminal connections to obtain professional forgeries. Someone who knows exactly how much money your family has stolen and from whom. As federal agents listening from outside prepare to intervene, I realize our family's financial crimes have attracted multiple layers of criminals who view us as both targets and opportunities. The graduation dinner that started this nightmare was just the beginning of a much larger and more dangerous situation. The FBI raid happened so fast that I barely have time to process what's occurring. Within seconds of Kozlov revealing the identity theft situation, federal agents storm into my office through multiple entrances, weapons drawn and commands echoing off the walls. Kozlov's associates surrender immediately, hands raised, while Kozlov himself sits calmly as if he's been expecting this moment. Mr. Henderson, step away from the desk. Agent Morrison commands, though her tone suggests I'm not in danger. Victor Kozlov, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit money laundering and attempted extortion. As the agents secure the scene, Kozlov catches my eye and nods slightly. Your grandfather would be proud, he says, as they place handcuffs on his wrists. You chose integrity over expedience. Only later do I learn that Kozlov's arrest was planned from the beginning. The FBI needed evidence of his criminal activities, and our meeting provided the necessary documentation of his attempts to recruit legitimate businesses for money laundering operations. My refusal to accept his partnership offer gave federal prosecutors the clear criminal intent they needed for a successful prosecution. Agent Morrison explains that the identity theft situation is actually part of a larger investigation into organized crime activities targeting financially vulnerable families. Your father's embezzlement made your family visible to criminals who specialize in exploiting desperate people. They steal identities, empty remaining accounts, and disappear before victims realize what's happened. The criminals using our family's identities have already been arrested in Paris, thanks to cooperation between federal agencies and European law enforcement. Jessica and Brandon's loud bragging about our family's wealth actually helped police track down the identity thieves who were monitoring American tourists for potential targets. With the immediate criminal threats resolved, I can finally focus on rebuilding Henderson Properties and our family relationships. I organize a meeting at the same Riverside Country Club banquet hall where this nightmare began, but this time the gathering has a completely different purpose. 23 people attend the family meeting. Immediate family members, extended relatives who were disgusted by my father's behavior, key employees of Henderson Properties, and the clients whose money was stolen. I've prepared a comprehensive presentation showing how we'll restore stolen funds, implement new safeguards, and rebuild the business with complete transparency. 6 months ago, I stood in this room alone, humiliated by family members who had stolen my money to fund their own selfishness. I begin. Tonight, we're here to discuss how we move forward as a family and a business built on honesty rather than deception. My father, Robert, stands and addresses the group first, his voice breaking as he describes the psychological pressures that led to his criminal behavior. I convinced myself that borrowing from client accounts was temporary, that I could replace the money before anyone noticed. But borrowing became stealing, and temporary became permanent. Mac saved our family from complete destruction by having the courage to face the truth. Patricia. My mother speaks next about the shame of participating in financial fraud and document forgery. I told myself I was protecting our family, but I was actually destroying the values we pretended to represent. My son showed more integrity in 1 week than I showed in 2 years of criminal activity. Jessica's transformation has been the most dramatic. The entitled college student who once stole thousands of dollars for European vacations now works 30 hours per week at Henderson Properties, while maintaining her grades at Northwestern University. Mac could have let us face criminal charges or dangerous consequences in Paris, she tells the group. Instead, he risked his own safety to protect us, while demanding that we take responsibility for our choices. Brandon addresses his criminal behavior with genuine remorse I've never seen from him before. I spent years thinking I was entitled to other people's money because I had creative ideas that deserved funding. Mac taught me that creativity without integrity is just theft with extra steps. The clients whose money was stolen have an opportunity to speak about how the theft affected their businesses and families. Most express gratitude for the complete restitution we've provided, and several indicate they want to continue working with Henderson Properties under new management. David Wright, whose construction company lost $60,000 due to my father's theft, stands to address the group. What Mac accomplished here goes beyond making financial restitution. He demonstrated that business ethics aren't just abstract principles. They're practical foundations for building trust that creates long-term success. Agent Morrison, attending as a representative of federal law enforcement, confirms that the Henderson family's cooperation with the FBI investigation led to arrests of identity thieves, money launderers, and corrupt officials in multiple agencies. This family's willingness to accept responsibility and work toward restitution turned a criminal case into a public service that will protect other families from similar crimes. The evening concludes with signatures on legal documents that formalize the new structure of Henderson Properties. I maintain controlling ownership with authority to make all major decisions. My father serves as a senior sales associate with clearly defined limitations on his access to client funds. My mother handles administrative tasks under strict supervision. Jessica works part-time while completing her business degree, learning the industry from entry-level positions rather than assuming unearned authority. Brandon's path has been different, but equally transformative. He completed electrician training through a program I funded, earned proper licensing and insurance, and established Bradley Electrical Services as a legitimate contracting business. His first major contract came through Henderson Properties, renovating our office building with completely honest billing and professional work quality. The most unexpected development comes 3 months after the family meeting. Sarah, my girlfriend who had been kept away from my graduation dinner through Jessica's lies, proposes a partnership that goes beyond our romantic relationship. She's completed her MBA in marketing and wants to help Henderson Properties expand into new markets while maintaining our commitment to ethical practices. I watched you handle the worst crisis imaginable with integrity and compassion, Sarah tells me as we walk through the rebuilt offices. I want to be part of what you're building both professionally and personally. Working together, we develop a 5-year plan for Henderson Properties that includes expansion into sustainable development projects, partnerships with minority-owned businesses, and a scholarship program for first-generation college students interested in real estate careers. The business my grandfather built, which my father nearly destroyed through criminal behavior, becomes a model for how family businesses can recover from ethical failures. The scholarship program holds special significance for me. Using money recovered from my father's theft, we established the Henderson Integrity Foundation, which provides financial assistance to young people who demonstrate commitment to honest leadership despite difficult circumstances. The first recipient is Maria Gonzalez, a community college student whose family lost their home due to predatory lending practices we help expose and prosecute. By the anniversary of my graduation dinner, Henderson Properties employs 37 people across 4 offices, maintains an impeccable reputation for honest dealing, and generates more revenue than the business ever achieved under my father's management. The success comes from strict ethical standards, transparent financial practices, and commitment to serving clients' interests rather than exploiting their trust. 1 year and 3 months after that devastating graduation dinner, I stand in the same Riverside Country Club banquet hall, but the scene couldn't be more different. This time, the room buzzes with genuine celebration as Henderson Properties receives the Illinois Business Ethics Council's Award for Outstanding Corporate Transformation. The crystal glasses reflect not just light from the chandeliers, but the faces of people who've watched our family choose redemption over revenge, integrity over expedience. Sarah moves gracefully between our guests, her engagement ring, catching the light as she discusses our upcoming expansion into sustainable housing development. We announced our engagement 3 months ago, and our relationship has become a model of the honest communication that now defines all aspects of my life. No secrets, no manipulation, no financial deception hiding behind claims of family loyalty. Ladies and gentlemen, I address the audience of business leaders, family members, and clients who now trust Henderson Properties with their most important investments. 13 months ago, I stood in this exact room alone and betrayed by people I loved most. Tonight, I stand here with genuine family and real friends who've earned their place in my life through honesty and mutual respect. My father, Robert, sits at a table near the back, wearing the same expression of quiet pride he used to fake when introducing me as his successor. But tonight, the pride is genuine, earned through a year of honest work, rebuilding trust, one client interaction at a time. He's become an excellent sales associate precisely because he can never again take shortcuts or manipulate situations to hide his failures. The real transformation began when I realized that betrayal, while painful, reveals everyone's true character. I continue, including your own. I could have chosen revenge legal prosecution, or simply walked away from people who hurt me. Instead, I chose to demand better from them, while still loving them through their failures. Jessica stands near the front of the room, holding the business degree she earned through evening classes while working full-time to repay her debt. She's been promoted to Client Relations Coordinator, a position she earned through demonstrated competence rather than family connections. Her biggest achievement isn't the degree or promotion, but the quiet confidence that comes from knowing she's building something real rather than living off other people's work. Brandon couldn't attend tonight because he's completing an electrical installation for a new client, but he sent a video message that plays on screens throughout the banquet hall. Mac taught me that real entrepreneurship means creating value for other people, not finding creative ways to take their money. His message begins. Bradley Electrical Services exists because Mac invested in my potential rather than just punishing my past mistakes. Patricia, my mother, works quietly in the background, ensuring that every detail of tonight's event runs smoothly. Her transformation from co-conspirator to trusted team member required the most time because rebuilding trust after betrayal is harder than building it initially. But she's proven her commitment through consistent, honest behavior, and her administrative skills have become essential to our expanded operations. Agent Morrison attends as our guest, representing the FBI's recognition of Henderson Properties' cooperation in multiple ongoing investigations. The Henderson family's response to crisis provides a model for how businesses can recover from ethical failures, she tells our audience. Their willingness to accept responsibility make complete restitution and implement transparent practices, helped law enforcement protect other families from similar crimes. The evening's highlight comes when William Hartwell, our family attorney, reads a previously sealed letter from my grandfather. Written years before his death, the letter predicted that Robert would fail as a business leader and expressed confidence that I would have the character necessary to rebuild the family's reputation. If you're reading this, Mac, it means you've discovered your father's weaknesses and chosen to address them constructively rather than simply walking away, my grandfather's letter states. Real leadership isn't about avoiding failure. It's about having the courage to clean up messes you didn't make while building something better for the people who depend on you. The letter includes information about additional resources my grandfather set aside for exactly this situation, including contacts with ethical business leaders who've faced similar challenges and recovered through commitment to honest practices. These mentors have been invaluable in helping Henderson Properties establish credibility in markets where our reputation was damaged by my father's crimes. As the evening winds down, I step onto the country club's terrace overlooking Lake Michigan. The same view that seemed so bleak 13 months ago now represents possibility and hope. Sarah joins me, and we watch the lights of Chicago reflect on the water while discussing plans for our wedding next spring and the opening of our Detroit office next fall. Do you ever regret not just walking away from all of them? Sarah asks, referring to my family and the massive effort required to rebuild our relationships. Never, I answer honestly. Walking away would have been easier in the short term, but it would have meant abandoning people I loved to face consequences they couldn't handle alone. More importantly, it would have meant giving up on the possibility that they could become better people. I think about the young man who stood in this same spot over a year ago, humiliated and angry, holding a phone that revealed his family's betrayal. That person had every right to seek revenge, to let criminal charges destroy his family's lives, to build his own success, while letting them face the consequences of their choices alone. But revenge would have made me smaller, not stronger. Legal prosecution would have satisfied my anger without addressing the underlying problems that led to their criminal behavior. Walking away would have protected me, while abandoning the possibility that love combined with accountability could transform destructive relationships into healthy ones. The hardest lesson was realizing that enabling someone's worst impulses isn't love, I tell Sarah. Real love means caring enough about someone to refuse to participate in their self-destruction, even when that refusal causes temporary pain. Henderson Properties now serves as a case study in business schools, demonstrating how family enterprises can recover from ethical failures through transparent leadership and commitment to stakeholder interests rather than just family benefit. We've been invited to speak at conferences about crisis management, family business governance, and the practical application of business ethics in competitive markets. But the professional recognition means less than the personal transformation I see in my family members. Jessica recently helped a client avoid a predatory real estate scheme using knowledge she gained from witnessing our family's own criminal behavior. Brandon's electrical business has expanded to employ 6 people, and he's become a mentor for other young entrepreneurs who want to build legitimate companies rather than seeking quick profits through questionable methods. My parents attend marriage counseling to address the communication patterns that enabled their criminal conspiracy. They've learned to have honest conversations about financial pressures, business challenges, and family responsibilities instead of creating elaborate deceptions to avoid temporary discomfort. The most meaningful change is that our family dinners now include real conversations instead of manipulation disguised as affection. We discuss actual problems and celebrate genuine achievements. We disagree openly rather than pretending agreement while secretly undermining each other. We've become a real family instead of just people related by genetics and financial dependence. As Sarah and I return to the banquet hall for final conversations with our guests, I'm reminded that this story began with betrayal, but ends with redemption. Not the Hollywood version where everyone is perfectly healed and all problems disappear, but the real-world version where people do hard work to become better versions of themselves. The young man who whispered "good" in an empty banquet hall over a year ago thought he was preparing for revenge. Actually, he was preparing for the most challenging and rewarding experience of his life. Learning that love combined with accountability can transform broken relationships into something stronger than they were before the damage occurred. Tonight, as I look around, this room filled with people who've earned their place through honest effort and mutual respect, I understand that my family's betrayal was actually a gift. It forced me to choose between becoming bitter or becoming better. It revealed character I didn't know I possessed. It gave me the opportunity to build a life based on integrity rather than just inheritance. The country club's grandfather clock chimes 11:30, marking the end of an evening that celebrates not just business success, but the triumph of choosing hope over hatred when faced with the worst possible betrayal from the people we love most. Have you ever faced a moment when someone you trusted completely betrayed that trust in a way that changed everything you believed about your relationship? How did you choose to respond? And what did that choice teach you about your own character? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit the like button to let me know. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories about overcoming life's biggest challenges, and share this with someone who might need to hear that betrayal doesn't have to define your future. Thank you for listening to this journey from humiliation to redemption, and remember that the greatest victories often come from choosing to build something better rather than just tearing down what hurt you. Until next time, keep choosing integrity over expedience, and never underestimate the power of love combined with accountability to transform even the most broken relationships.